Maybe it's just me, but there's almost a handle with care quality to premium vehicles. Not that they aren't well built, but there's almost a delicacy to them that doesn't necessarily apply to mainstream models. Which brings us to the Lexus GX, a rugged family hauler that's refreshingly durable. You know, I'm a big believer that the vehicle you drive every day should be like a good pair of jeans. Nice and versatile, you know, you can work in it, get dirty in it, but then also, when it's time for a night out on the town, well, it's up to that as well. And that probably describes the GX perfectly. It's luxurious, but it's also rugged, it's rough, it's versatile. This is one of the most versatile SUVs I've driven in a long time. Now, if you're looking for a reminder of what luxury vehicles were like a decade ago, well, this is it. And I know that might seem like a slight against the GX, but it depends on how you look at it. Take this interior, for example. It's a bit of a time capsule. It's outdated in its design, some of the materials aren't that nice and up to modern standards, but the plus side is that it still has big, chunky buttons that are clearly labeled, easy to identify, easy to figure out what you want to do. Yes, this thing still has a touchscreen infotainment system, and it's terrible. We'll get to that a little later. But the point being that there are still interactive buttons to use rather than touch capacitive sensors everywhere that are sometimes hard to understand, hard to read, and hard to use, especially when you have gloves on. Now, this is the second generation GX, and it was introduced at the end of 2009, over 10 years ago. And that is a hell of a long time for a vehicle to stick around in this business. Now, Lexus has introduced 2 updates over the years to this thing, including one for the 2020 model year, which is what I'm driving right now, but they haven't really done much to keep up with the trends. That again has its pros and cons. Take the way it drives, for example. This thing is an old school body-on-frame SUV, and it's unique in that sense. It's also probably my surprise of the year in terms of ride comfort. It's got an adjustable air suspension setup in the back and a multi-link one up front. It's also got hydraulic anti-roll bars, and I'll get to those a little bit later. But the point being, this thing is kind of analog in a digital world. It's really old school. The market is really new, it's really up to date, and this thing is still sticking to its guns in terms of the way things used to be. I really love it. The same goes for what's under the hood. The world has gone to turbocharged engines. This thing is still a tried and true, old school, naturally aspirated V8. It's a 4.6 liter and it is silky smooth. The same goes with the 6-speed automatic transmission it's paired to. This thing is an absolute joy to drive. No, it's not fast, but that's not what it's supposed to do. It's just very smooth, it's very linear, it's very responsive. It's a couch on wheels. I absolutely love cruising around in this thing. I have the suspension set to the comfort mode, and it is just a joy to drive. I can't express to you enough just how comfortable this thing is. The same goes for this interior. Now, the leather is pretty soft, but it still feels nice and durable, and I absolutely love this red color. It's kind of like a nice little pizza sauce red, you know? Makes me feel kind of hungry and warm and fuzzy on the inside, but it's absolutely fantastic quality. Some of the other materials in here, not so much. Some of the plastics aren't that nice to touch and are kind of prone to scratches. This headliner is a little bit bizarre. It's like a very soft fabric, and it's like the pre-Alcantara days. I really wish Lexus would do something about that. But otherwise, the space is pretty good and it's usable. This thing is a living room on wheels. Now, adding to that living room vibe is the rear seat entertainment system that's available with the executive package. It's got screens on the backs of these seats so that the kids riding in the back when you're on your way to the cottage can stay happy watching TV or movies. It's got HDMI ports as well as old school AV ports, and they can control the audio system from back there to change the song or the radio station on the road. And that brings me to this infotainment system, which is a huge letdown. You know, it was maybe okay back in 2009, but it's not okay by today's standards. Times have changed, and this thing definitely has not. For starters, no Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and that would be enough to take this off my shopping list. Yes, it does have Bluetooth. Yes, it does have auxiliary ports. You can connect your phone, but in this day and age when we want to be connected with our devices, well, this thing does not do the job. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, they are definitely the safest ways to use your phone in the car. You can access your Google Maps, your music, and your messages all from this head unit, and you can't do that here, and that to me is a huge letdown. Making matters worse for this infotainment system is just how laggy it is. The response to your touches are not quick at all, and it can be really aggravating when you're trying to input directions, for example, or change songs, and I really can't stress enough how desperately this thing needs an updated infotainment system. Now, that's a problem. The interior looks a little outdated, but it does have modern features. The front seats, they're heated and ventilated. The steering wheel is heated and the rear seats are heated. It's also got tri-zone automatic climate control, which is great to keep your family comfortable on the road. Now, in terms of advanced driving features, it does have those. It's got adaptive cruise control with lane departure warning. It doesn't feel as modern as some of its competitors, but it does the job perfectly fine, and that is a huge help out on the highway. Now, speaking of being out on the highway, that's where this 4.6-liter engine is happiest. It's quiet, it's smooth, and it doesn't use a lot of gas. Around town is a completely different story though, and this thing chugs 91 octane like I used to drink PBR back in college. It is a pig on gas, and that is one area where it lags the competition in terms of those modern turbocharged engines. Towing capacity is rated at 6,500 pounds, and that lags some modern competitors, but it's more than enough and more than I would want to tow with an SUV like this anyways. That'll handle most boats and travel trailers and shouldn't be a problem. So what about when the pavement ends? Well, the good news is the GX comes equipped with a lot of off-road goodies right out of the box that'll help you when adventure calls. Think of this thing as like a baby Land Cruiser but with a Lexus badge on it, so that means all the basics are already here. Good ground clearance, decent approach and departure angles, and that rear air suspension that you can raise at the flick of a switch. It's also got hydraulic sway bars that are stiffer on the road to reduce body roll, but they loosen up out on the trail so that you get better suspension articulation, which really comes in handy. As part of the updates for 2020, Lexus also made its multi-terrain monitor standard. Now what that means is it uses the vehicle's cameras to keep an eye on what's going on around you to help you avoid obstacles out on the trail, and that really comes in handy in a vehicle of this size, especially with these big wheels. You don't want to scrape those things on rocks, so it's nice to be able to see what's coming and go around them and use as much of the trail as possible to avoid rocks, logs, you know what I'm talking about. It really is a cool feature, and it also has a neat feature that shows you what's going on under the floor. Think of it as like a bird's eye view, but for underneath the vehicle. Very, very handy stuff. You can also equip the GX with some other off-road goodies, but they don't come cheap. That same executive package that gives you the rear seat entertainment system, well, that's the only way to get things like extra skid plates underneath, as well as an upgraded crawl control system and a transmission cooler. And that package will set you back $6,000, which is a hell of a lot of money even for a premium vehicle. Now, I will admit some of the stuff we're getting into out here is probably more than most GX owners would want to get themselves into. And I wouldn't blame them. I mean, you don't spend $80,000 on an SUV to come get the clear coat scratched on branches. But the point is, this thing is definitely built to tackle all kinds of trails. And the other thing is, a lot of stuff we're doing out here, well, they're no worse than an average rough cottage road. And I'm sure a GX owner may find themselves at a cottage or may own one, and they need to get somewhere that an average vehicle can't, and this thing is more than up to that challenge. Now, I can't reiterate enough just how big this thing is, and that's where that camera system definitely comes in handy. This thing is a true blue body-on-frame SUV, old school the way it was meant to be. That also means it's got a proper 4x4 system that has 4 high and 4 low. Now, 4 low is how you unlock that crawl control feature as well as that multi-terrain view system. It's also going to give you all kinds of traction when the conditions call for it. We're out here in some pretty deep snow, and I have no reason to doubt that this thing is going to get the power down to where I need it. It's also got a locking center differential. Now, you hit the button here, and what that does is it ensures that no matter whether you've got traction or not, power is split evenly to the front and rear wheels, because the important thing when you're off-roading is to keep letting the wheels slip. Traction control systems, what they do is they defeat power to the wheels that are spinning, and that's no good out here, and it's a quick way to get yourself stuck. But with a traction control system turned off and locking differentials, well, there's not a whole lot you can't get yourself out of. To recap, some of the stuff I like about the Lexus GX are the silky smooth V8 engine, the go-anywhere ability, and the usable and substantial feel. Some things I don't like are the outdated infotainment system, the lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the poor fuel economy. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the 2020 Lexus GX is an improved infotainment system away from being the perfect premium SUV. Forget the tough as nails attitude or the ability to go just about anywhere you want, or the fact that it's nearly as luxurious as anything else on the market. Because the best part of this thing is that it just feels substantial. And a decade after it launched, it's hard to find a better all-purpose SUV.